Hello, everybody. This is Gina Tucci. I'm our event manager here at Master Builders Association. Thank you for joining us this morning. We're going to get started in a few minutes, but we wanted to open a little early so that you guys could go ahead and start chatting and welcome you to the program. Katrina Peterson is joining me as our co-host of the technical back end. So if you have any questions, she's got some quick tips that she'll put in the chat for you, and then you can chat with us if you run into any issues and need some help with that.
Welcome, everyone. This is Katrina Peterson. I am so glad that you are here to join us.
Well, hello, Clay. We are excited for the program as well. That's right, Cameron. It is going to be a great event. We got to see some sneak peeks early on, and there's some really good content. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining. We will get started here at 11 a.m. Yes, this is going to be recorded, and we will have it available on demand to everyone who requests a link. Thank you for asking that, Jamie. Again, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. There are some quick tips in the chat here that my co-host and technical back-end staff member, Katrina Peterson, has posted. If you have any questions or run into some technical difficulties, we can help you out a little bit and give you some tips. But we will get started here at 11 a.m. We have some great content, a great program today. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. We will get started momentarily. Hello, Colleen. Thanks for joining us. And just as a reminder, we are recording. There will be an on-demand link available after the event that we will be sending out to people who would like one. Hi, Craig. Hi, Tracy. Thanks for joining us. We'll be getting started here momentarily. Hi, Gail. Hi, Susan. That's fantastic. Yeah, go ahead and email us. It'll be in a follow-up email of how to get that link for the recording. And I do see that it's 11 a.m. So I'm going to go ahead and mute myself and turn this over to our interim executive director, Jerry Hall.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Master Builders Association of King and Snohomish County's 2021 Economic Forecast. For those of you I have not met, I am Jerry Hall. I've been working for about 2.5 years now as MBAC's Chief Operating and Financial Officer, but today I come to you as our Interim Executive Director. I wish we were in person, but I'm pleased to make this virtual acquaintance. And although we're virtual, I thought this event is worthy of a tie this morning. This economic forecast is one of the association's most popular events. In fact, we're anticipating more than 250 people in attendance right now. This forecast offers a snapshot of where the economy has been and a preview of where it's going, and of course, how our industry fits within that economy. But before we begin, I'd like to offer a hearty thanks to the people who made today's economic forecast possible, our sponsors. First of all, AAA Car, Tack Glass and Closet, faster and better for 60 years, and Puget Sound Energy, who can be proud of their 145-year legacy of helping make our communities better places to work and live. Both sponsors do wonderful work across our region, and it's great to have them here with us this morning. We have a very exciting program for you today, and I'm sure many of you are as eager as I am to know what the new year has in store. We have two incredibly knowledgeable experts with us today. Ali Wolf, Chief Economist of Zonda, will be giving us the big picture of our national economy and industry. And Senior Vice President of Level Capital, Todd Britsch, will be providing the regional close-up. Together, Ali and Todd will give us all a better sense of the challenges and opportunities ahead. The fact that you're watching me on a screen right now tells us a lot about the year we've just had. COVID-19 defied all predictions and basically defined 2020. For the association, it meant getting our industry humming again after Governor Inslee's stay-at-home order and creating the framework and toolkits for safely reopening. And it meant changing the way we do business to serve you, our members, transitioning to virtual events like this, and online classes is just one example. But it was also a very hard year. It was a time of tremendous loss and unprecedented challenges for our nation, for our region, our industry, and for our communities. With such a trying 2020, I think we're all looking forward to 2021. One thing I'm excited about is deepening the association's commitment to building a thriving, inclusive, and well-planned region. Before we continue though, during this month of Martin Luther King Jr.'s birth, we have a short video for you about MBAC's commitment to an inclusive and diverse association. I want to thank everyone involved in this video for sharing their thoughts on how we can build this together. Enjoy. Please run the video.
It's kind of a rare thing to see an Asian American person being the construction business owner. The open door policy of the MBA and accepting everybody. Diversity brings different ideas that everybody else can learn. So I think that's a wonderful thing.
I don't feel like I'm an outsider. I feel like there are challenges for sure. I know that there are discriminations and social injustice that is happening around me. Master Builder Association, I've only found inclusion. I've only found support.
To just like bring the whole industry up together to solve, for me, sustainability issues, which is huge, but also like affordability and other issues that maybe as individual organizations and builders, we don't have the capacity to deal with all that. So to have an organization that's working on those things, I think is important. I think if you are a person of color who's interested in construction, I think now is the time to really get into it. The field of housing is struggling not just with people of color, but with just the younger generation of getting into this industry.
When I started out in 2012, I was considerably younger than majority of my peers at the councils and at the networking events. But that is what allowed me to advance my career and my knowledge and wherewithal to where it is today.
MBA is vast in its networking opportunities. The women's group is actually one of the biggest ones in the country. So if you're a woman in Washington, in King County right now, and you want to start a business or you're in a business, it's nice to network with women where you can feel like, oh, she's doing this too. I think that there's power in that, you know?
The capacity to use all of that knowledge, experience, investment opportunities into actually building something that could radically change the world is there. I think it's just a matter of like rallying people together, inviting people into the right rooms, into the right conversations. I'm excited.
Business ownership comes with societal responsibilities too. Many eyes are on us. And what is MBA King and Snow? What are they doing? It's not all about let's make money and that's it. You know, there's a far more to that, and I think MBA King and Snow covers that very well in a very accepting way, but also in the educational way that leads the way for the rest of the country to really follow.
I love that video. Watching it is, it's one of those things that makes me so proud to be a part of this association and to be working with the board of directors to lead this association. But now I'd like to introduce our next presenter of this morning's economic forecast. He's the Director of Entitlements and Government Affairs at Murray Franklin and serving as the 2021 President of the Master Builders Association of King and Snohomish Counties. Todd Levitt. Welcome, Todd.
Thank you, Jerry. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our 2021 economic forecast presentation, virtual style. Of course, we would like to be in the Meidbauer Center where we usually are together, but I know the team has worked very hard on this virtual format, so you really should see no difference other than the very small detail of actually seeing each other physically and being able to catch up with each other in person. Small details. But until then, we have our screens that we are all now best friends with, and whatever else you like to cuddle up with from wherever you are in watching us this morning. You know, out of all the great events and programs the MBA puts on annually, this is the one I really never miss. Let's face it, when it comes to our various businesses, it's all about the numbers and data. That is a key driver when we all make business decisions. You know, looking back at 2020 and specifically to April 2020, when everyone was essentially ordered to stay home unless you were deemed an essential worker, there were so many unknowns around all of us, regardless of the topic. You know, when it came to our industry, many of us were thinking the worst. Look, 2007, 08 is never that far from our minds, and having no idea what we were heading into, many of us started to prepare for a major recession. You know, whether that meant an immediate halt to investing more into your respective business, or furloughing employees, or outright layoffs in preparation for something of a recessionary nature, the moment of our future at that point in time was unclear and surely felt uncertain. But here we are, almost a year later, and it appears our industry not only avoided a major recession, but quite conversely has thrived quite nicely through COVID. You know, rather than me speculate or opine as to why I believe that is, we have two great economists in Ali Wolf and Todd Britsch who will help us walk through our market on the what, hows, and whys, and more importantly, help us understand perhaps where we are heading locally as an economy and industry. So as I stated earlier, data is so key to all of us when we make business decisions. And having good access to data is so important. It can come through in many forms and from various sources. That's why the MBA will be heading down a path this year to become one of those great sources for data as it relates to our industry. Jerry Hall, who you just heard from, is our interim executive director and just finalized his 2021 goals with myself and the executive committee from the board last week. Some of the key components of his goals will be to create some better data tracking tools for our industry that we can utilize both as a board and hopefully with our membership. So I hope everyone enjoys the program and really the numbers and charts that we are about to see. I suspect everyone will grab onto something from what you hear shortly and take it back to your respective company for further discussion or just plain old good information to share. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the data. So, but before we get to the data and the numbers and to Ali and Todd, I would like to not only thank, but invite two of our event sponsors to say a few words. First, I would like to introduce AAA Cartech Glass and Closet.
Thank you, Todd. Can you guys hear me?
We got you, Cameron.
Perfect. Hello, I'm Cameron Cartack from AAA Cartack Glass and Closet, where we've been faster and better since 1956. I'm a blessed man with an amazing wife and two beautiful children. If there's one thing I learned in 2020 was the value of toilet paper. If only I'd invested in Charmin stock. Darn it. But honestly, I am just so thankful for the MBA during this challenging time. We're grateful that they advocate for our local building industry, and I'm honored to serve on the board of directors as the associate director at large. I just want to thank all of our building partners. We look forward to working with all of you guys this year. Thank you so much. Have a great show here.
Thank you, Cameron. And now I'd like to introduce Puget Sound Energy to say a few words.
Hi, thanks, Todd. I'd like to thank the MBA for the opportunity to sponsor and also thank the building community for your partnership as we create a clean energy future for all. Our commitment remains steadfast to being the clean energy provider of choice, and we will balance our Beyond Net Zero by 2045 objective with our customers' expectations for uncompromised safety, reliability, and affordability. Affordability for our customers has been a focal point in our almost 150-year history and will remain so as we proceed on this journey. So again, thank you to the building community for your partnership.
Thank you, Mari. And thank you both for your support of today's program. We really appreciate that. And now I'd like to welcome our presenting sponsor, Home Street Bank, to say a few words and introduce our keynote speaker. Go ahead, Don.
Thank you, Todd. Good morning. As mentioned, I'm Don Pethick. I'm the Deputy Lending Director for the Home Builder Group here at Home Street Bank. This is a new role at the bank, and I'm excited about the opportunity. I get to step in the shoes of a longtime lending director here, Jeff Todd Hunter, who will be retiring in April after nearly 40 years at Home Street. Jeff, congratulations on a well-deserved and well-earned retirement. I'm honored to be here this morning, though, representing Home Street and in support of the Master Builders Association. Both of these organizations share many common values. Chief among them is investing in our local communities in an effort to provide housing for all in our community. For those that don't know, our roots run deep in the Puget Sound, so deep, in fact, that Home Street will achieve a milestone that few organizations achieve, and that is later this summer, Home Street will celebrate its 100-year anniversary. For most of those 100 years, we provided our home builder clients financing solutions for their residential development and home construction projects. I just want to take a quick moment to say thank you to our existing clients for their business and let you know that we'll continue to work hard to earn your future business. For those in the audience that aren't current clients, I encourage you to reach out to me and visit our website at homestreet.com and connect with one of our relationship managers to explore how you might be part of Home Street's next 100 years. Thank you for giving me this time this morning. I look forward to connecting with many of you in the very near future. But now let's move on to what the real reason you're here, and that's our featured sponsors. So with that, it's my privilege to introduce Allie Wolf, the Chief Economist for Zonda. As head of the Economics Department, Allie manages and analyzes the content for Zonda, provides data analytics, runs special research projects, and does presentations across the country on topics spanning both the housing market and the wider economy. Allie has focused a lot on her career in understanding prior recessions and led the charge on millennials discussing millennials in the home building space. Please join me in welcoming Allie Wolf.
Thank you, Don. And thanks to the entire MBAX team for having me here today. I was in person 2 years ago, I believe, and we were joking when this presentation started about how different things look today than they did 2 years ago when we were trying to figure out the state of the market. Now, as mentioned, when I do my presentation today, keep in mind that I'm going to do more of a high-level presentation. The way I usually do presentations is I'll start by talking about the national picture, and then I'll show some local comparisons. So you'll see that. And then of course, Todd's gonna come in and actually talk more granular about what's happening on the ground. I wanna make sure I set my timer because sometimes I can run a little bit long. So let's dive in. As mentioned, I am Allie Wolf, the Chief Economist with Zonda. Now, some of you are probably familiar with Myers Research, Metro Study, or Hanley Wood. Towards the end of last year, we went through a big rebrand. Now we're just under one umbrella, and that's Zonda. So we still track 500 housing and economic metrics. We look at the entire building life cycle from raw land all the way up to the closing of new home communities. My role is to stay high level, look at policy, look at national trends, look at economic international trends, look at what's happening in different markets. But we also do have a local expert. Some of you probably know, and I apologize to him that I may butcher his name, Mark Zawistowski, our regional director for the Pacific Northwest. So if you do have specific questions, again, I'll show you some Seattle stats, but if you want to talk to Mark, his contact information is there. For today's presentation, I'm going to start high level. We're going to just take a look at what's going on in the economy. We're going to move to fiscal policy and then spend the rest of the presentation talking about housing. What you should know and what you'll prepare for is that my tone is generally positive, but I definitely want to lay out the risks just so we're fully aware of what could derail this crazy and awesome growth we have been living through. For the economic update, some of you may know this if you've tuned into our monthly COVID-19 webinars, but I'm sure most of you haven't. So I want you to understand our backdrop. And the first and most obvious is that the economy is not going to fully recover until we have the virus under control. So that's really the number one thing we have to watch to understand which way our risks tilt. Second to that, when we went through the recession, I would argue we're not in a recession anymore. We're back in expansion mode, but there was a lot of talk about what is the shape of the recovery going to be? Is it going to be a U shape? Is it going to be L shape? Is it going to be V shape? Well, we now know our answer, which is we're living through a K-shaped recovery. If you're not familiar with this idea, what you should know is there are some people and there are some businesses that are wealthier or more profitable than they were at the beginning of 2020. And then you have some individuals and some businesses where this not only feels like a recession, but it feels like a depression. There are food lines. There are people who have been unemployed since March of last year. The economy looks and feels very, very differently to them. And throughout this presentation, you're going to see so many examples of the K-shape, of a very, very strong housing market, and then a fairly struggling commercial real estate market, depending on where you are. For example, so as we look at the data, I think one of the unfortunate outcomes of the virus determining our fate is that we expected, and it happened, that things are getting worse before they're getting better. Think about how we had Thanksgiving and we had Christmas and people got together with their friends and family, which obviously rose the COVID cases, increased hospitalizations, and we started to see not only governments reimpose some shutdowns, but individuals also say, well, if the virus is everywhere, I don't want to go out. I don't want to live my normal life. And in them pulling back their activity on the service side of the economy, that directly impacts businesses. So when you look at non-farm payrolls, reminder, we lost 20 million jobs almost right away, March and April. We all know how nervous we all were. There was so much uncertainty. And then we started to grow almost right away. In May, we added 2.7 million jobs. In June, 4.8 million jobs. This was awesome. But then the rate of growth started to slow to the point that in December, we actually shed 140,000 jobs. We're now 10 million jobs below where we were in February of last year. And it's consistently been 10 million for the past few months. So we're now hitting this sticky point where the easy gains are behind us. But remember what I said about that K-shaped recovery. When you go into the data to understand the job losses in December, it was not uniform. Trade, transportation, utilities, that's the goods side of the economy, top half of the K. Added 200,000 jobs. If you've ever done market studies or tried to analyze demand for the housing market, you know all about professional and business services. Added 161,000 jobs in December. Now, one thing, I always go below the headlines and try to dig into the data. There's an interesting thing with professional business services in December in that I think it was 30 to 40% of all of those jobs were temp help. So just to help with maybe preparing for tax season or something like that. So not all of that will directly translate to housing demand, but you can certainly see there is still growth even once you subtract out those 30 to 40% individuals. On the other side though, you see it, leisure and hospitality, the service sector, high touch, being around other people, not good for a COVID world, shed 500,000 jobs. When you look at the employment picture compared to February of last year, leisure and hospitality, still off 23%. But on the other side, financial activities, basically recovered. Trade, basically recovered. And when you look at construction, you can see we're off 3% as a whole, but this includes residential and commercial. Take out and just look at the residential component, we have more jobs, more people are employed in residential construction than in February of last year. So then you step back and you say, okay, here's the high level stats. What does this look like by market? And know that the national unemployment rate is 6.7%. I don't like the figure. I think it is not all encompassing and it's not necessarily accurate, but using that, we can at least compare different markets. what we're seeing, and I think it's quite upsetting. In places like Las Vegas, LA, Houston, you have almost a 10% plus unemployment rate 10 months into this. On the other side, though, you can see Seattle. You guys are outperforming the national average at a 5% unemployment rate. You still have the K-shaped recovery. There are certainly companies, there are certainly industries that are still struggling in Seattle, but the diversification of the economy and, of course, the existence of some of those check jobs and a good presence of home building has been able to keep that unemployment rate a lot healthier than what you see on the national level. Now, in my job, and you heard this in the introduction of the program, we want to understand where we are, but we also want to have a sense of where we're going. And so our team stepped back and they said, okay, if we're going to try to forecast out economic growth, there are some conditions we want to see. And once we see those conditions, we're going to change our tone on the market. But for now, we're still a little bit cautious because of some lingering risks. So let's go through them. We'll feel good when there's a trusted vaccine. So on the surface, you say, yep, give that a check. We got those emergency FDA approvals. People are getting vaccines. This is great. But we were told that through the end of 2020, we would have 20 million vaccines distributed. And the reality was, I think we hit 4 or 5. So that distribution is still going really, really slow. And think about Wall Street and how they were planning for 20 million to be distributed and then this really rapid pace. So I'm going to knock this down to a half a check because I think, again, going back to our backdrop, the virus still being out there and not getting enough people vaccinated still poses a risk to our recovery. We said, we'll feel good when the election's resolved. We give this a check. We now know who is the president and we know what happened in the 2 Senate runoff races. And for us, the reason we wanted to watch for that election to be resolved is what happened in the stock market. Because there were so many pundits coming out and saying, if this happened, the stock market will do that. And if that happens, the stock market's going to do this. And there were all of these horror stories about a bad outcome and the stock market crashing. And you know what? We continue to hit all-time highs. I'm not talking GameStop. I'm talking just the broader market. You are seeing a lot of strength on that front. And we will feel good when we get another fiscal stimulus package. This one, we are not only giving a check, but we are giving a double check. We see so much support from the federal government. And that's why the section is, how much does it really matter? In a way, I'm being facetious and I'm not trying to discount, again, the 10 million people that are not working. But when we talk about an unemployment rate that's still at 6.7%, and we talk about the economic pain, we shouldn't, in theory, be seeing so much strength in the economy. We got our GDP numbers out today. We still grow 4% on an annualized basis in the 4th quarter. Those two things don't seem like they make sense. And that's because of the presence of the fiscal stimulus. Of course, the Federal Reserve did a lot to lower those interest rates right away and support financial markets. But on the fiscal side, this is going more towards the you and me's of the world. And it was very frustrating. In December, we hadn't received an additional stimulus package. There were really big things that were going to expire at the end of the year. People were going to lose unemployment benefits. People could have started losing their homes. We finally got a deal, $900 billion. It's lower than what we originally had on purpose. Because right away, we thought everyone was going to go down together. And with that K-shaped recovery, there's parts of the economy that don't. No one on this call should get direct checks. We don't need it. We're employed. Our industry is thriving. But people that are in other sectors do. And so you can see small businesses got a lot of money, unemployment benefits. When I talk about 10 million people that are still unemployed, that if you look at that data set, 37% of those people have been long-term unemployed. Like I mentioned earlier, lost their job in March and April and have not been able to get work yet. They don't want to lose their homes right now because that's directly related to what's going on with the virus. The reason we talk about this, I would say second to getting the virus under control, the stimulus has been so critical. What you're looking at here is total checking accounts, money in checking accounts, which is the orange line, and total debt levels, which is the blue line. I'm going to drop in this here, which shows you when the CARES Act went out, a little bit over $2 trillion. We saw those that were unemployed and employed save more money. Because if you were employed, maybe you refinanced, you were getting a savings on that front, you couldn't go anywhere. You couldn't spend your money even if you wanted to. So people were saving money. Those that were unemployed were on the unemployment insurance. There was that extra $600 every single week. So that was able to contribute to that. Layer in this additional $900 billion that we're talking about, saving accounts are going up still. You can't tell on this because of the scale what's going on with debt levels. So let me zoom in. Look at this. We are seeing debt levels going down. In a recession, in a time of economic uncertainty, it's very, very rare to see savings up, debt levels down, and not shown here, income levels going up. Income was higher in 2020 than we had seen in 2019. And what was really interesting about this is we heard from people from them spending money. So they couldn't go anywhere. They couldn't spend money in the service side, but geez, they still wanted to buy workout equipment. They still wanted to buy sports equipment. They still needed to get things to work from home. So our economy that traditionally is a service-based economy flip-flopped. Services and goods were crushed in March and April, but then goods came back, services didn't. Goods, people went out, retail sales up year over year, auto sales close to record highs, home sales hitting the highest level since 2006. And when we look at this, every year we do a survey for millennials. We've been doing it for the past 5 years, and I added a question this year, and I said, hey, did you save more money in 2020 than you did in 2019? And 60% of millennials said yes, they did. And when we ask them, what do you want to do with your savings? The number one is, hey, I want to keep saving. I want to build up this nest egg. Number two, use it for a down payment on a home. And this is so important because when you talk to, the largest living generation, again, our biggest up and coming buyer group, they are very, very active. I think the number one buyer group today as well. For those that haven't already purchased, what they say is the reason they haven't been able to is not necessarily servicing the monthly payment, it's coming up with that down payment. So this year through forced savings, that's actually been really beneficial to us in the housing market. Now, as we're looking at all of this, economic picture, not so good, though the service economy should come back as we get to the vaccine economy. And investors are not just looking at today, they need to be looking at the future. And normally, I'm sure most of you know this, normally there's a relationship between the 10-year treasury yield and 30-year fixed rate mortgages. They're alternative investments. They generally move in tandem with a certain range between the two. 10-year treasury has been going up as investors have been feeling a little bit more positive about where the economy is going. If they think there could be some inflation on the horizon, they want to protect their money. They want a term premium. So 10-year has gone up, mortgage rates have not. So our estimates show that rates should be between 2.9 and 3.4% today, given the historical gap. We're not seeing that. We don't know if they do end up needing to meet back up. But what you should know for our forecast for mortgage rates is we're not calling for some kind of rapid increase. We're not saying, wow, by the end of this year, we're going to be at 3.5%. But we do think expecting rates to be more likely to go up than down in the future is something we should plan for, especially as we start looking at the affordability picture in the housing market, which I'm going to show you in a moment. So we step back. We know where we are. We know where we've been. Housing was crushed for 6 to 8 weeks. It was so scary. And now we finished the year with new home sales up 36% year over year nationally. You break it out by market. A place like Denver, home sales are up 60%, Phoenix up 40%. You can see Seattle for our new home pending sales index. We actually have sales down, but let me explain. And to be clear, I reached out to Gina with MBAX and I said, hey, I just want you to understand that our data does show Seattle is down. We were talking about the supply side and she said, some of our builder clients are saying that that's becoming a concern. So no, and I'm going to show you data to back it up. This is not a change in demand. Our index is made up of 2 different components. So one component is total new home orders. How many contracts are signed of all of the new home communities that are out there? The second is, if you're a builder, how are you doing in terms of average sales rate? How many homes are you able to sell? Now, generally, we don't show these components of our index because you can see they just generally are so closely aligned until 2020. So all of a sudden, our new home orders are down while our average sales rate per community is way above what we saw pre-pandemic. New home orders, why are they down so much? Well, if you look nationally, community count is down 16%. If you look in Seattle, community count is down almost 30%. So not only have some builders sold out more homes than they can bring to market that quickly, but there's also builders that are intentionally saying, we don't want to sell out of all of our communities. Normally, it was really interesting to watch. In June, July, August, builders were saying, we sold 20 a month, we sold 30 a month, and they were so excited. And then when they realized, I think it was because we came from such a dark spot, but then they realized, oh shoot, this demand is sustainable. This is not just like a grab everything you can get. This is actually backed by fundamentals, and people really want to buy homes. Builders started to say, you know what, we're not going to sell 20 homes per month. We're maybe going to sell 3, we're maybe going to sell 4. We're going to slow that pace to preserve our community count. So that is driving down overall new home inventory. Oh, sorry. The really fast sales pace is driving down the new home inventory, and then intentionally slowing sales is pulling down the average sales rate per community. So there's a complete rational reason why the data looks like that. Interesting dynamic though, is normally when inventory is tight on the new home side, we say, okay, well, at least there's a lot of transactions going on the resale side. If you look at active listings, this is showing you each month throughout a year, 2017, 18, 19, and 2020. You can see 2020 through the end of the year, basically very, very few units on the ground. Whatever's there sells basically right away for above asking price, usually with multiple offers. And so as we look at that, we now have this lack of supply that we can build the case. It doesn't matter almost what location you're at, what price point you're at, who you're trying to cater to, lack of supply. Demand is awesome for a whole bunch of reasons that we'll talk about later, which of course is equaling higher prices. But take a look at it. I think this to me is one of the most interesting slides because you normally see the lowest priced homes, your entry-level homes, appreciating faster than others. You have a bigger buyer pool when you're looking at the lowest price point. Then you see middle tier will be growing a little bit slower, but around in pace. And then the luxury market is not going to grow as quickly. That's just understanding basic supply and demand of those homes. Well, they're now all moving in lockstep to the point that both the bottom, middle, and top are now growing over 7% year over year nationally. And then we show by market. It's amazing. San Jose, Phoenix, Seattle, and San Diego all have double-digit home price appreciation across each one of those categories. This is nearly unprecedented. This is absolutely crazy to see that even the luxury product is up 13% compared to last year. Now, those numbers, they come from the resale side. When you look at the new home side, we know that price increases are still the norm. So for example, 60% of builders in the most recent month raised prices month over month, compared to normally, if you look at the same month going back over the past few years, it's about 30%. And then when you look at how big has the price increase been, now, no, this is national data. This comes from a survey that we launched at the beginning of this week with 300 division presidents across the country. We're showing you the same question we asked in October, November, December, January being blue, of if you took a price increase, how big was it? So the lion's share is between $3,000 and $5,000, but look over to the right. The December, 4% of builders said that they raised prices by $10,000 in December. Now it's 17% of builders. Again, in December, 2% of builders said they raised prices more than $10,000. Now it's 13%. So you're really seeing that builders continue to react to the demand, because I'll show you in a moment how good this year has started off with home sales. This is not only talking about 2020 now, we're talking about what we're seeing in 2021. When you look at the housing market, there's been this interesting dynamic that normally new homes are a lot more expensive than existing homes. It makes sense. We have a luxury good. We have a premium product. You should expect to pay more money. But throughout the year, what we've seen is that builders have been really good at right sizing their homes, trying to fix the price point to be a little bit more attainable. Where on the existing home side, there's nothing entry level on the market. So you're getting pulled up by home sales that are more on the move up side. As such, you're seeing that the price spread between new and existing has actually gone down, which is really an interesting dynamic. But what you can't see here is that everything is more expensive. You look at the home price is higher than where it was, doesn't matter new or existing. But note that I'm saying top line more expensive because we are a monthly payment business. I'm going to show you a series of graphs here. Take a look, Seattle. It is your fifth one over. It's always going to be the fifth spot over. So what we're looking at first is if we are a monthly payment business and we know that rates were incredibly low at 3.5% and now they're seriously low at 2.8%, that move alone saves people $200 every single month on their monthly payment. Now, what I like to look at though is what is that monthly payment equivalent to? And let me tell you why we're doing this. So when I talk to some of my friends who have not purchased homes yet, they say, gosh, I wish I would have bought a home in 2016 or 17 or 18. Well, yeah, they missed the boat on the top line price. But if they are mad that they didn't buy then because they didn't think they could afford, the monthly payment in Seattle is now the same level it was in 2017. Those low mortgage rates have literally turned back time. But I showed you that slide that showed you guys have double-digit home price appreciation at each of those different categories. How long can we continue to say, wow, the rates are really offsetting the affordability problem? Well, in Seattle's case, you have about 10% more home price appreciation from where we're standing today to where you start getting pretty concerned that your buyer pool, which maybe is quite large, is now starting to shrink because of affordability concerns. So we're looking at that. We should keep that in mind. That's assuming nothing at all happens to interest rates. They stay completely flat. But as we step back and we look at the housing market and we think about what's driving it, we know those interest rates are driving it. We know fear of missing out is driving it. In demographics, when I would have met with you guys a couple of years ago, I would have talked about, wow, look at the peak age of millennials. They're about to hit the point that they're going to be wanting to buy homes. And so we saw that. But what we couldn't have called for was this one component that turbocharged the housing market, which is the ability to work from home. We know throughout 2020 and the fact that we're still doing this virtually in 2021, our home has become our focal point, our gym, our bar, our movie theater, our office. And if we're talking about work from home being really that thing that lit the fire to really get the housing market back and growing so rapidly, we have to acknowledge that we're about 10 months into these work from home days. Let's say a little more than halfway. Because if you look at the vaccine distribution, you think about when are people going to start feeling comfortable going to the office regularly, we still have probably 5 to 10 months where we're all going to be, if you can work from home, if you're able to, if you want to, likely going to be doing so. But even think further than that. We know from Gallup research, from Deutsche Bank research, that people want to continue to work from home with more flexibility than they had pre-COVID. And people say that they are hoping for 2 to 3 days a week, every week working at home. That impacts where people live, that impacts how people live, and that's a really important consideration for us in the home building industry. Because what we see, the number one reason people said that they're moving right now, if they're working age, so 25 to 64, is that flexibility to work anywhere. And the second highest answer is that their current rent or their current mortgage is too expensive. Now, I'm glad I actually put this question in my millennial survey in 2019, not knowing COVID was going to happen, of course. And we had asked millennials, have you seriously considered moving? And if you have, why? And back in 2019, 31% of millennials said, yeah, we're seriously considering moving. That's 22 million of them. Fast forward to the pandemic, we now have an additional 7 million that say they want to move. They're seriously considering it, directly related to the pandemic. And when we ask them why, number one answer, I'm looking for more affordable housing. Number two answer, I'm looking for a home with a bigger yard. That one kind of makes me chuckle. But number 3 is I'm just looking for a change. Okay, so now we consistently see work from home as one of the drivers, and then looking for affordable housing is a really important consideration. When you pull up homes and you look at the price per square foot across, again, the entry level, the move up, and the top tier, what you see is Seattle is a top 5 for having the most expensive price per square foot when you're looking at that entry level component. What I want to caution on this is don't get discouraged if that's the case, because even though you're not the cheapest market, even though you're not a San Antonio or an Orlando or somewhere in the Midwest, there's still relative bang for buck. And that is such an important consideration in a market like Seattle, where your number 1 and your number 3 top buyers are coming from the 2 most expensive in the country. So that allows for people to come and maybe bring some equity, maybe go into the move up market or the luxury market, which could be why you're seeing so much strength across all 3 of the categories. But you also have to think, where is someone moving from in Seattle? Did they have a more centrally located location where now they're willing to sacrifice a little bit on location because they want to get a new home? My timer is telling me I have 3 more minutes. So we're going to wrap up this section by saying you're already seeing this happen. Seattle is a top 5 migration market, and you've seen the direct, we know that it was already a very appealing market. There was a lot of job opportunities, but you're also seeing that so far in 2020, the most recent data available was December. Seattle was the 5th top place people were moving, according to LinkedIn stats. As I move to my final thoughts, the first thing I want you to recognize is what I mentioned earlier, which is 2021 is starting out with a bang. We all, I believe, expected 2021 to start off really, really good. How could it not? All of those big drivers of housing strength was still with us. But now we have 60% of builders that said demand is stronger than they expected. They would have expected so many good things. I had one builder say that so far in January, they had their best week in the company's history ever. And then you have about 40% of builders that say their demand is on track with what they expected. And what I find so interesting about today's housing market is we really have 7 main buyer groups, where sometimes, 3 or 4 of them would be really active, a couple of them flat, and maybe 1 or 2 slow. Right now, all of them are active. All of them are coming out. They want to buy homes. First-time buyers, move-up buyers, the luxury space, the second home, the K-shaped recovery. Think about the top half of the K. Think about the stock market. Retirees, 55 plus was hit hard, and now it's coming back real strong since about the middle of last year. Investors and relocation. But as we look at this, I have told you so many positive things and exciting things that we have to look forward to. We do think 2021 will be a tale of 2 parts of the year. First half, easy comps. So year-over-year growth rates are going to look good. So people are still going to feel encouraged by the headlines. Work from home is still really big. Interest rates important. We likely will see more homes hit the market, hopefully, on the resale side, because we have some vaccines out, because we have more personal protective gear than we had last year, which will make people feel a little bit more comfortable. This is good because a lot of people have to sell a home to buy a home. So in theory, should bring up overall transactions and that fear of missing out. But sometime in the second half of 2021, and I'm not saying this is June, this could be 4th quarter, this could be, towards the end of the year, there are some risks, showing that comps could get harder to beat. So then the market could look soft on a headline basis, which isn't always good for our space. More people start to return to the office, less of a focus on being home all the time, every day. Interest rates, maybe a little bit higher. Wallet share, which is really important. Remember, goods versus services. What if goods has to soften a little bit to allow for all of that service activity that we've put off, the vacations, the trips, the amusement parks, and affordability? So I would say we generally feel good. There are risks really across the board. Lot supply being one, refinancing, keeping people in their homes, affordability, costs. I haven't even talked about building material costs, but we're seeing them go up really across the board. But we have the stock market, and we have the savings, and we have the stimulus, and we have the revitalization of the bottom half of the K, and we have people saving money from the refinances and from demographics. So my final slide here is, as we look throughout this year, we do feel very, very optimistic about the first half. Like I said, a little bit of concern as we get towards the end of the year that our crazy and awesome growth rates that we're experiencing may not be sustainable. We're not calling for a collapse in the market. We're just saying it may not be as feverish as we move too far into the year, but we're still calling for growth, about a 4% increase in new home sales, 17% increase in housing, single family housing starts. So with that, I am going to turn it back over to Don.
Thank you, Allie. Insightful and informative as always. Now I would like to introduce Todd Britsch, Senior Vice President for Level Capital. Todd has spent the last 18 years creating custom reporting services for the new construction industry, along with consulting with builders, developers, lenders, and many other industry professionals. Throughout Todd's career, he has been the Pacific Northwest voice and forecaster for the new construction industry. Please welcome Todd to the virtual podium.
Hi, guys. I appreciate having the opportunity to come out here and speak. And like everybody else, I'm truly missing the live events. A lot of my thought processes really kind of coincide with Allie's. There we go. I have a little bit different take on a few different things, and you'll notice some of my numbers aren't going to match up with Allie's, and I'll explain why as we start running through the presentation. I will begin with the labor force and employment numbers. As you can see in December, I mean, last year we had record low unemployment. We were sitting at 2.5 in King County. We've actually seen these rise for the last 3 months as we saw the additional shutdown that the governor did and put into effect in late October, and has yet to release those openings, those businesses to reopen. I'm going to preface this talk today. I've told everybody else at the MBA and so on. I'm on oxycodone right now. I actually have a compound fracture in my foot right now. I have a broken heel. I have torn tendons, ligaments. Pretty much my entire left leg is messed up. So you're either going to get a little bit of my leftover oxycodone that I took 4 hours ago, or you're going to see me grimace in pain every now and then. So I just want to forewarn you. In order for the numbers here to increase, obviously we've got to start opening up the businesses again. And right now, I believe every county is still at phase 1. So we're not able to get the restaurants back open and most of the other service-oriented industries, which is where we've taken the largest hit. It's been kind of a bipolar year if you look at regards to when we have lost jobs, when we have gained jobs. January we were down, obviously February we were up, March as soon as COVID hit, and then April was where we took the biggest hit. And then as we opened things back up, we had great summer and we began to gain those jobs back. And then the shutdown occurred again and we started to take some fairly sizable hits here. As far as December losses go, where did we lose most of those jobs? King County lost about 15,000, Snohomish 5,000, Pierce County 8,000, Thurston 10, Kitsap and Thurston round off to around 6,000 jobs in total. Statewide, we still have about 121,000 jobs down from January. And the Puget, that's statewide. And then the Puget Sound, we're only down 71,000 jobs in total from that January number, which is good. When we look at actual year over year numbers from December to December, King County was down 66,000, Snohomish down 22, Kitsap down 8, Pierce 35, Thurston County 9,000, and then Skagit down about 4,400. The percentage that you see down here represents what county and their share of those overall losses year over year. So again, year over year, different numbers than what we just looked at on the previous slide. We're down about 145,000 jobs. There are 36,000 new jobs posting currently within 50 miles of Seattle, and they're good paying jobs for the most part. As of January, we have 150,000 individuals that are roughly still on unemployment. Now, if we look down here at the bottom, much like Ali was talking about, leisure and hospitality has taken the biggest hit. 71,400 of those jobs still have remained to be recaptured. 24,000 in manufacturing, 21,000 in education, and 15,000 in other services. If we add up the leisure and hospitality and other services, for the most part, these are not home buyers. The median income for leisure and hospitality and the other services that come in here, which is for the most part retail, the average income is about $35,000, and that is not our primary home buyer. Those are apartment renters. And which is why it's one of the many reasons we're actually seeing the housing market flourish the way it is right now. I'm going to talk about the residential market first, and then I'll jump into new construction. This is everything. So this is all new construction, all resale, and how the markets are reacting. If we go back to August and September, August was the best month in Washington state history for residential sales, when you add in new construction and resale. As far as December existing sales, home sales were up 37%. January new construction was flat. And I will say for January right now, we're on pace to be down 19%. I think we're going to pick up a little bit here towards the end of the week, as the rest of the numbers come in. And this isn't to be alarming by any stretch of the imagination. If we go back and we look at the numbers from last January in new construction compared to, say, 2019, we had an increase of 45% in new construction sales for January. So for us to be down 19%, again, it's not alarming at all. There was no way that we could keep up with that velocity that we had seen. Newly listed resale inventories for August. I'm sorry. Again, I was late getting this thing together, so I've been down and out for 4 days with this leg injury. That is December. New listed inventories. King County added about 1,388 new listings. That's an 89% increase year over year. Kitsap County was up 39%. Pierce County up 31%. Snohomish County was up 60%. But still, that's only 575 units. And when we look at what sales have been doing on the resale side, we're not keeping up with that pace whatsoever. As far as the pending existing home sales, so this is again a year-over-year comparison. As soon as we add more inventory into the market, we start to get more sales. So King County was up 89% with their new listings. Consequently, sales jumped by 51%. Kitsap's up 23%, Pierce is up 28%, Skagit 30%, Snohomish at 37%, and then Thurston down here at 16%. All in all, the resale market is not slowing down whatsoever, even as we move forward into the beginning of 2021. As far as active listing comparisons go, so these were the total number of units listed throughout the month of December, active inventories out there. And you can see even with the jump of 89% in new listings, we were still down in the overall number of active listings, down 10% in King. Pierce County down 55, Skagit down 56, Snohomish down 55 as well, and Thurston down 46. So all in all, existing inventory fell by about 26% year over year. Months of supply. We are sitting at a 2-week supply of inventory everywhere else except for King County. And King County is only at a 1.1 month supply. And again, to go back and look at why King County has that 1.1 month supply, and it was the increase of 86% causing it to jump up. Average days on market. How long does it take to get all your offers in and review them? Typical process is about 2 weeks. We're sitting on an average days on market. If we look at everything, it's probably sitting at 15 days. King County is the only one up, and it's around 19. These numbers should be, if you've heard me speak in the past, these should be at a 30-day time frame. Obviously, we're in a very unique time in the marketplace right now, and it is what it is. It's a frenzy out there. Oops. Median close price. As Ali pointed out, we've seen double-digit appreciation in new construction. We've got double-digit appreciation in the resale market as well. King County's up 14% year over year. Kitsap's up 14. Pierce is up 18. Skagit up 16. Snohomish up 16 and Thurston up 18. So this has been a trend that we've seen. There's been a couple areas where we've seen some dips, primarily in Seattle. And I'll get into that here in a little bit. The condo market has not fared nearly as well as the residential. So the previous slide was detached only. This gets into the condo market. So King County has seen a 5% increase year over year. Kitsap up 7, Pierce up 15, Skagit up 18, Snohomish 6, and Thurston's actually down 5. If we look at Seattle alone, you'll see here, Seattle only saw a 2% increase in the median close price, while the price per square foot remained flat. We're just not seeing that appreciation in the urban environment. I love this data piece for those of you that haven't seen me show this before. What we have here is every county, every dwelling type, resale, new construction. This number up here on top represents the number of units that are selling above list. A year ago, it was 31% of all units sold above list price. January of this year, we are at 53%, at an average of 6.6% above ask, which equals about $41,000 for a single family, $29,000 for a townhome, and about $18,000 for multifamily. So the number of bidding wars that are still happening out there is pretty dramatic. I'll get into the new construction. I've got this chart for new construction as well. It's pretty cool. So new construction townhomes. I'll start with that. We saw some tremendous increases coming out of 2019. We had a 50% increase in Q3 of 19, 110 in Q4. That really continued on rolling into the first quarter of 20 at 30%. I will add this too. I mean, the 110 and the 58% increase, if we come back to the third quarter of 2018, we remember when the market significantly slowed in June. And we saw sales drop by 40, 50% in some geographical areas as we rolled through the latter part of 2018. So while 110% increase is really good, it's important to be very aware of what happened historically there. Q3, we had a 50% increase in 19 and a 54% increase in 2020. Again, really good, solid numbers. We did see that number begin to slow a little bit as we rolled into the fourth quarter of 2020, which I will get into. So this is King County versus the city of Seattle. Now, currently, 88% of all townhome listings in King County are in the city of Seattle. Seattle number of available listings in Seattle are up 41% year over year for new construction. What we have here is the percentage of market share for sales. So it's the Seattle market share. So we've been running at about 87, 78, 71. That number has been declining a little bit, but now we've run out of inventory outside of the city of Seattle. And you will see here during the heart of the protests, that number actually dropped all the way down to 57% as the exodus out of Seattle continues. Now, I will say that I've made mention that there is an exodus out of Seattle. I've been saying it for almost a year now. We knew it was going to happen prior to, as soon as we started to lock people down for 30 days, 45 days, 60 days, and you're locked in the small quarters trying to work from home, it just isn't very conducive. And I do get pushback oftentimes because realtors in Seattle say, hey, the inventory is selling. It is selling. Where the exodus is coming from is out of the apartments. So in the existing townhome markets where we've seen listings jump by 150% at times, the exodus is coming out of the apartments into those particular townhomes, and the owners of those townhomes, the affluent buyers, are moving off into the suburbs. It has become less expensive to own a townhome on the resale side in Seattle than it does to rent at this point. New construction median price and then price per square foot. So over here, up here at the top, we've got the median price of new construction townhomes, and this is closed pricing. We'll see here in the first quarter of 20, there were very few closings at this time. They were higher end units, which is why we saw that price spike. And then we came back down into where really there's been a threshold of nearly $700,000. If we look at this number, and you can see, I mean, we go back until the first quarter of 19, it really floated right around that 700,000 mark. If we come down and we follow the chart down here on the price per square foot, and we look at what happened in the third quarter to the fourth quarter, we saw that median price per square foot drop significantly. What that tells me is that we're still at that 700 threshold, but what we started doing is selling smaller units. Seattle new construction. So this, excuse me. Price per square foot versus resale. So Seattle new construction, the price per square foot is down 7, while resale is down 2%. The amount of resale inventory that came onto the market in the fourth quarter really created a competitive market for the new construction townhomes. New construction townhomes had also seen pretty sizable increase of about 12% in that average list price versus the resale at only 3.6. So we started to steal some of that inventory or some of those buyers away into the resale market. Detached new construction. First quarter, I'm kind of anticipating about a 10% slowing for the first quarter year over year. Right now, January's on pace, as I told you, to be down roughly about 17%. That's going to shift as we roll through the next couple of months. We got hit significantly hard in February and March with new construction sales last year, obviously due to the pandemic. I will say the fourth quarter, we were down 7% for new construction sales. Now, oddly enough, there were a couple of builders that we all know that had pulled some inventory off the shelf. They didn't want to release it until the first quarter. For the most part, some nationals, they had hit their numbers. It was more than one. And so to be down 7%, and again, if I come back and I look at the first quarter of 2019, or excuse me, fourth quarter of 19 was a really good quarter. And again, so to be down 7%, knowing that inventory wasn't being released onto the marketplace, not concerning whatsoever. First quarter numbers last year, again, looking here, was the best first quarter that we had had since 2005. So again, being down a little bit, not at all concerning. Fourth quarter detached sales, so to break it out by county, King County was down 11. Kitsap was up 21% as we start to see some of that migration and the ability to work from home and home buyers moving out into a more rural area. Pierce County was down 5%, Skagit County up 12, Snohomish down 14, and Thurston down 3. Inventory issues again, and builders not releasing inventory. Annual new construction median close price and a percentage change year over year. Now these prices are obviously in the thousands. So if we come out here to 2018, this was that proverbial peak in the market that we saw, and then the slowdown that came in the latter part of 18, rolling into 19. The other contributing factor to both King and Snohomish counties and why that median price point is dropping is that the homes are being purchased in more rural areas than in, say, the heart of the cities any longer. Seattle residential new construction for single family is down. When we look at the sales on the east side, there's really a huge lack of inventory. And again, this ability to work from anywhere, work from home, and the affordability factor, we've pushed homes further out, specifically in Snohomish County, where we've seen that North Creek submarket, which for 15 years was the most desirable submarket in the Puget Sound, it doesn't have enough inventory to sustain any demand. So we've pushed buyers further and further north. Pierce County, Thurston County, Kitsap County, really not significant changes. Thurston County's up 9, Kitsap County's up 6, Pierce is up 5. And again, it's just, we've got such a diverse amount of product that's being offered out there, is why we're not seeing that median price point jump significantly. And I will say, so again, this is the entire year. So new construction. So this is the same chart that I pulled up earlier, but now we break it out. You can see here over on new construction. It tells a different story. So the previous chart would show how many homes and buyers are actually paying more for their homes. This gives us a glimpse into the amount of upgrades. So we ended the year at a peak at 53% of home buyers were adding on average 3.8% above list to their homes. And that total was about 23,000 in upgrades. As we roll into January, it's 40% of buyers are adding 5.2% above list at an average of $34,000 a unit. You compare that to early in the year, it was $18,000 or $16,000. This is what a year of COVID does. So we have millennials that are vacating apartments. We have millennials that are vacating townhomes. We have dual incomes and individuals that are working from home. And as millennials are entering into a very strong housing market, they know what they want and they're willing to spend the money to get the amenities that they want. If they're going to be locked in their home for any period of time, or there's even a threat of that happening throughout 21, they want the amenities inside of their home for it to be as comfortable as possible for them. Inventory levels, months of supply. We are at the lowest levels that I have seen in my 20-year career. King County has roughly a 7-month supply of a vacant lot supply and a 1.2 month supply of spec inventory. Kitsap County's at 14, Pierce is at 12 as far as lots. Snohomish County at an 8-month supply of lots and a 1.7 months of supply of spec. You guys have heard me say for at least 6 years, 7 years, that this is crisis mode. And we're running into this, the issue is just kind of expanding as we throw COVID into the mix. The number of plat applications is down. The number of lots recorded is down. We honestly went through roughly about 5,000 lots. We pulled that many more off the shelf in 2020. So the idea of lot pricing coming down isn't going to happen anytime soon. And we're running into a couple of different issues that are causing home prices to continue to rise. This is another one. So this is the volatility in the lumber market, lumber futures. Now, keep in mind that lumber companies have to operate essentially the same way that gas stations operate. You hear a barrel of oil goes up from $50 to $75 a barrel. You're going to watch gas prices go up immediately because that's their replacement cost. If you see a barrel of oil go from 75 to 50, those prices are not going to come down on gas until they have replaced their current existing inventory with a less expensive inventory. And it is the same thing with lumber. And if we look at the volatility, I mean, early on in the year, we didn't know how COVID was going to impact housing. So consequently, we saw lumber futures drop. And then as we started to see the housing market rise, lumber futures peaked. And then on September 11, for whatever reason, and I couldn't tell you, they fell by 33%, September 14th, excuse me. And then we floated right around in that mid 500, mid 6. And right now, it's as of today, we're sitting at 891 again. But just last week, we were down at around 680. It is virtually impossible for builders to plan and budget when we have this type of volatility. I mean, you almost have to come out here and look at the previous peak of the market where it was nearly $1,000 a linear 1,000 feet. And that's your budget line, because this is the most volatile that I've ever seen. Again, the futures market be. Builders are still running into supply chain issues, whether it's washers and dryers or flooring. The shutdowns within different trades throughout the country and the globe, for that matter, has made the ability to get all of their products in a timely manner very challenging, especially for the smaller builders. The nationals, they've got their contracts, they've got their resources, and unfortunately for the smaller guys, you know, if you've got a D.R. Horton or a Lennar that's buying tens of thousands of units per year versus the 100 that you purchase, you know, the nationals are going to take a little bit more priority. So I'm going to give you some good news here. This is the demand scenario. So I do this in a couple of different ways. I'll do it on the number of driver's licenses that have been brought into the state from out of state. And that doesn't even account for the new home buyers that are born and raised here in Washington state. This is just in migration. I will say I left out the 2020 in migration, which it is a positive number, but it's really only about 2,500 individuals. Is it larger than that? More than likely. What we're seeing is the new residents that are moving here, going to the DMV is not high on the list during a COVID experience. So I could see a huge spike in those numbers rolling into next year. It just remains to be seen. That said, I left that in migration out. Everything else is up to date. So new drivers since 2015, 565,000. The average drivers per household is 1.9. That creates a demand for 297,000 households. That's total dwelling units. Now, a home ownership rate at 63% creates a demand for slightly higher than this. I'm a little bit conservative. I'm doing 60%, which then creates a demand for 148,000. That's statewide. Now, the Puget Sound absorbs 67% of all new construction and in migration. It's really kind of a religious number. If we look at that entire demand scenario, as of today, there's still a demand for almost 55,000 owner-occupied new construction units, because it's not like we have any resale inventory on the marketplace. Okay, so then again, we do it by job growth. Now, I will state this as well, that right now, the job growth that I used was still to the end of 2020. 424,000 jobs added. Most economists will use an EP ratio at 1.2. I do not. I use an EP ratio at 1.78 because that is the average income earners per household. That creates a demand for 238,000 owner-occupied homes or dwelling units. Again, home ownership rate at 60% creates a demand statewide for 143,000 homes. Number of sold units, and then my demand, which is again 67% for the Puget Sound, 51,000 owner-occupied homes. If I do that same scenario at the 1.2 on an EP ratio, that would create a demand for 104,000 owner-occupied homes still remaining in demand. So then the question lies, because I know somebody's out there thinking it, well, Todd, if we look, we're still down 100 and some odd thousand jobs. Yes, we are. Those jobs, the vast majority of those jobs are not homeowners. Those jobs are apartment dwellers. That's why I didn't calculate those in too terribly much. And the numbers are going to vary, obviously, but even if I drop those numbers by another 10%, another 20%, the amount of demand that we have for owner-occupied homes is off the charts. So this seems to be the biggest trend on YouTube right now. I mean, I'm constantly getting feeds on housing analysts, and most of them really aren't the industry experts because they don't have the access to the data points and haven't been doing. Most of the guys that I get these feeds from that are out there on YouTube spouting off that there's going to be a housing bubble and it's going to burst are realtors in a small geographical area, and it's a hobby for them. So is there going to be one? Is there a bubble? Is it going to burst? Yes and no. There are areas that are at high risk for forbearance, where we've seen that forbearance be between 8 and 12%. Miami's at 12, New York's at 10, Las Vegas is at 10, Chicago's at 8. Now, it's unlikely that's going to happen here in the Puget Sound. The last time I saw our forbearance numbers, they were roughly at around 6 to 7%. But there are other things that are playing a role in this as well. So we have affluent renters that are fleeing the city, but they're not fleeing the state, unlike New York and New Jersey and Chicago, where we're seeing exit migration. Affordability, the opportunity to be able to work from anywhere creates affordability. For example, I'm in Leavenworth right now, which is why I broke my ankle and my foot, because I slipped on the ice. Change in millennial thinking. So as soon as COVID hit, these millennials had to learn how to cook. And I'll just use an example. It's not all millennials, so I'm not trying to offend all millennials, just my nephew. My nephew and his wife, been married for 1.5 years. They went out to dinner 6 nights a week. And on the 7th night, they went over to my brother's place. This forced them to cook. And the reality for them was, within a month, they're like, oh my God, look how much money we're saving by not going out. Forcing many millennials not to go out, whether it was 3 nights a week or 2 nights a week, and staying home, it just changed their thought process and why they started saving money. And Allie alluded to the savings rate when she was speaking earlier. We are also going to see strong tech job growth for the next 3 to 5 years. While the work from home is becoming the new trend, I don't think it's going to be something that keeps individuals from moving out to geographical areas. I will still go into the office 2 days a week, 3 days a week. Having that synergy is absolutely critical for a company that wants to grow and be innovative. And I think what we'll see once the dust starts to settle and COVID relaxes is that individuals will do just that. So as Facebook hires and Microsoft and Google, they'll bring people into the state. Now, they'll work further out, but they also will be here locally because they'll want to be in the office, again, 1 to 2 days a week.
Todd,
Yeah.
let's we have a few minutes left, and let's talk some questions from folks and take some questions. We kind of covered construction costs, which was asked by Gary Peterson, but do either of you have a take on labor costs as we go forward post-COVID?
Go ahead, Al.
Yeah, so great job, Todd. Yeah, for construction costs, I want to hit on both of them actually, the construction costs and the labor costs. But like I mentioned earlier, when we were doing our builder survey, one of the questions we always ask is, what are you seeing with troubles just across the board? Are you seeing labor problems? Are you seeing governmental delays? Are you seeing supply problems? And the results from this week, all of them are going up. So 59% of builders said that they're having governmental issues, and that's coming from slower permitting. We have 43% of builders that saying they're having labor problems, which actually, of all things considered, considering how much we talked about labor, that seems to be the least of the three concerns right now, which is so strange that that's actually changed, because 75% of builders said supply is by far their number one biggest issue. They don't know how to get their costs under control. Everything seems like it's going up. We have building material costs. Number one is the biggest issue. Land prices, of course, 2. Gapping out of lots is 3. Building material availability 4, and new home affordability. So I don't think those supply chain issues are going away anytime soon. So we may see some softening later in this year, maybe if we can get the supply chains. I'm not just talking London, I'm talking like across the board, windows and doorknobs and all of that. You could see it maybe come down towards the middle of the year, but I think spring selling season, you should expect it to stay very high.
Thank you. To both of you, what factors should the real estate industry be watching in the coming months to inform their decisions? So let's say we're starting to watch a higher penetration of vaccination rates, and maybe that's one of the actual things to be watching. What other indicators would smart industry folks be looking for?
For me, it's going to be the Fed behavior. So we have Yellen coming in as a new Treasury Secretary. She has already mentioned that she would like the Fed to ease up on the MBS market, mortgage-backed securities, and on their bond purchasing. If that happens, if we look at where the 10-year Treasury yield is today, the only reason interest rates are down at 2.25% is because the Fed is setting the secondary MBS market.
Mm-hmm.
If the Fed pulls out of that MBS market, rates are going to jump by at least a full point, if not 1.25% overnight. If they pull out of the 10-year Treasury or the bond market, we could potentially see a rise in the cost of those bonds, which then will make rates go up a little bit higher as well.
And I would add, I think the one thing we assume that our leaders are rational, or we hope they are. And let's say that happens, and let's say that rates go up and this becomes a problem, and we know that housing demand then starts to slow. You would hope then they would take a look at what policies they had done and said, well, housing is making up the largest share of GDP since the mid-2000s. Housing is leading the growth. For every home we build, we create jobs. For every home we sell, we stimulate the economy. So you'd hope there'd be an adjustment period on that front, but obviously we just don't know how that will play out. I would add to the Fed, because I think that's a very good one, and what happens with policy. I would add the stock market. To me, a day down here or there, bad days, good days, fine. But we know how skittish people can be, especially the 55 plus buyer, and especially those that their wealth is tied to the stock market. You could see a little bit of an impact if there became some kind of sustainable downtrend, which we're not calling for, but I mean, we're not stock forecasters, but you could maybe see. And I think the resale inventory would be a really interesting component, because if we don't see resale inventory trend up a little bit in the spring selling season, it's just going to be off to the races with prices, which I think will be a bit concerning if they keep going up this fast for a
Yeah,
long period of time.
Yeah, this type of appreciation it's unsustainable. It can't happen forever. I won't say that there's a market correction because I hate using that word. It's homes are worth what somebody's willing to pay. And watching months of inventory or the actual sheer number of new homes and listings coming online, because resale is going to play a huge key with how new construction falls.
Thank you. Another thing that was sticking out to me during your presentations is that we're talking about COVID and we're talking about interest rates as two of the major factors right now. And both are somewhat temporary. I mean, as you were discussing, Todd, interest rates could very likely go up, which greatly impacts our industry. And COVID is going to slowly change. And we're seeing President Biden try to greatly accelerate the vaccination rate to going from 1 million vaccinations a day. Now we're looking at 1.5 potentially. Do you see, as we've watched Redmond, Bellevue, and Seattle downtown core rents drop, do we start to see some of these temporary factors cease, and then things return to kind of where they were, Q4 2019?
For me, maybe in 2022.
Okay.
The Fed's not going to jump out of either the bond market or the MBS market through 21 and possibly through 22. Rents have dropped between 9 and 20%, and it's a ripple coming out of Seattle, and it's more than likely going to stop at Everett and maybe Tukwila to Federal Way in there where we start to see the rental rates no longer continue to fall. And that doesn't, those percentage rates and drops also don't include the incentives that renters are getting. Mm-hmm. And right now it still makes more sense when you look at the numbers. It makes more sense to buy than it does to rent.
Okay.
I saw some, I don't even believe that this is real, but I saw someone post, it wasn't Seattle specifically, but they were going to rent in a downtown center. And they said the reason they chose to rent instead of buy is because they got 7 months for free. I've never even heard of 7 months for free. That's crazy. So I do think, and I don't know how much I mentioned the commercial real estate market, but we are still nervous that even though I agree with you that some of this is temporary, if it goes on too long, there's some pain on the commercial real estate market that could be felt in different local economies. But ultimately, I think any kind of downtown city center being around people is still really a preference once we're in the vaccine economy. People live in cities for a reason.
Yeah, no, I just laugh because my first few months at home, I thought this was great. And the last few months, I would pay a lot of money for my son to go back to school and for my office to meet people again. So I'm probably not alone. Well, listen, we're coming up on 12:30, and I think we've had a great place. So I'm going to turn this back to whoever. Is it Todd? Who's next? Our Todd.
No, Marco, but you can turn it back over to me. That's fine. I know the board of directors have to run to a board meeting here. So Allie and Todd, thank you. Like I said in my opening comments, I never, ever miss, this event the MBA puts on, and you guys are great. And can't wait to get a hold of your presentations, quite honestly. I think there was more even there that Todd wanted to get to, but we thank you both. We thank our sponsors. We thank everyone for joining us and wish everyone safe health. And hopefully you get injected with a vaccine soon. Thanks all.
Thanks, Todd.